We can begin now. As most of you know, I'm Jerry Garfinkel. I'm the treasurer of the Jewish Study Center, and our classes are free. Our instructors are great. People love our classes, but we do have expenses, and so we encourage people to donate. You can go to our website, www.jewishstudycenter.org, and you click on donate, and you can donate with a credit card from your PayPal account or by check. If you click on check, it'll give you an address where to send it. As most of you probably have realized, this is recorded. After the class is over, I will erase the stuff that came before the class, and I'll post the recording on YouTube, and then I'll send an email to everyone who's registered on where the recording is. Besides the recording, we also have closed captioning on, so you can watch the words if you want, if you're hard of hearing or you can't understand my accent. And again, let me repeat that we do want your comments and your questions, but we want them to be put into the chat and address them to everyone. Sometimes someone will comment on your comment, or someone may even answer your question. So
people have entered the waiting room and are waiting. Can you set that up so they can come directly in?
I'm letting people in, Jay, as they come.
Or as you're talking, okay.
So anyway, at the end of the session, we'll have a Q&A, and maybe in the middle, Jay may stop for a while and look at the questions. So at the Q&A, Jay will answer questions, and some of the questions Jerry Stilkin, my colleague, will answer. Won't answer. He'll ask the question, and he'll take some questions from the chat. And I'll ask Jerry now to introduce both Jay and the class. You're on, Jerry, but you're also muted.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yes.
Unmute yourself, Jerry.
I did. Thank you, folks. As you know, this is the second class. Last week was the first in this particular series. Jay has been teaching Kabbalah at the university level, at Fabrengen, in many different places, and he intended last week and this week to be a kind of an introduction to Kabbalah, and urges you to come to his Monday night class. I think that's every Monday night, virtually. A week from Sunday is Tu B'Shvat, and Jay will be doing virtually a Kabbalah service for Tu B'Shvat. If Jay is ready, I'll turn it over to him. Jay, you're muted.
Yep, I'm back.
Go ahead.
Okay. What is it? It says unmute myself. Okay. Well, welcome everybody for the second class. Some of you made it to the study group on Monday, probably a little prematurely, because this class is geared to really finish out the orientation that you may need to understand what's going on. We're going to focus on the Zohar, the primary compendium work of doing Kabbalah. It's not a book, a treatise on Kabbalah. It is an exercise in doing Kabbalah, in drawing down revelation from Torah. It's in the form of a midrash. So my goal tonight, though, is really to make it clear to everybody in a more meaningful way how Kabbalah can be applied to contemporary spirituality. Whether you're Christian or Jewish or another religion, it's very universal theology, as we talked discussed last week. And I hope to demonstrate to a certain degree how the study of the Zohar and continuing study of Kabbalah, engaging in Torah, as it's called in the Zohar, can be meaningful today and makes you think. But the essence of Kabbalah is really applying it to our own prayer, to our own interpretation of Torah, to understanding of the holidays, the symbolism of Judaism, which is largely the symbolism of Kabbalah, and the various rituals throughout the course of the year. So I'm going to start tonight with an overview of what we talked about last week, because the number of people just registered this week. We have a number of new people here. As Jerry mentioned, the session is being recorded and was recorded last week. So if you missed last week's lecture, which was more an introduction of basic concepts, then you might want to watch that after this one. It might clarify some of the things you don't understand in this one that I might have talked about last week. So to start, welcome everybody. Kabbalah means receiving, and it's an approach to Judaism of God flowing in, as opposed to, or as a supplement to, the idea of God being transcendent and outside of us, removed. That the idea that God is unknowable, can't know God, so belief in God is irrelevant to Kabbalists. But that aspect of God, called the Ein Sof, the without end, the infinite, is unknowable, but the one thing we can know is these 10 categories of emanations that we can receive. And just a second. Sorry, I had some background noise here. So the really beginning point of experiencing Kabbalah is a concept called devakut. Although we can't know God, we can attach to, connect to. The davek, it means to glue to, connect to these flows. And that's what the companions, the characters of the Zohar, the 10 rabbis, basically, and then their special guests that they meet along the road, are really endeavoring to do. They're trying to receive revelation, receive the flow, and the revelation is revelation from Torah. It's this jumping off point. Zohar is organized around the structure of Torah, and with chapters on each sphira. But then it goes off in different directions from that, but oftentimes in a surreptitiously subversive way, meaning subversive to the Midrash, to standard interpretations. And surreptitious in the way that it determines what it's going to talk about. Something that starts talking about the evil inclination, for instance. We're going to review in a minute what the evil inclination is, important part of Kabbalah and of understanding the Zohar. Later, if we have time tonight, I'm going to read some sections of Zohar about the Sfirot, but also about also examples of surreptitious subversiveness, because what we're reading now in Torah is very difficult for contemporary person searching for spirituality. It's about 10 plagues. How could God create such suffering? What kind of God creates suffering of that kind? And who's guilty if there's sin involved? Is it the Pharaoh? Is it God? Is it the people? Zohar has very elegant, poetic, and deep answers to those questions. Same thing with the binding of Isaac. We read that on the second day of Rosh Hashanah every year. And a rabbi will stand up and give a drash on it, an explanation of how it's a test of will, and it's a test of belief in God. It's testing Abraham. Does he really believe? It's nothing about that, according to the Zohar. And the Zohar interprets it in the symbolism that we're going to talk about today. The symbolism of Abraham, which is the sphira of chesed, of kindness, of goodness, and Isaac, who's this sphira, the emanation, the channel of power. So we also talked last week, as you remember, about the 4 themes of Kabbalah and of the Zohar specifically. The 4 ways that we can relate Kabbalah to ourselves and to our lives. One is, we call that, I've given those 4 themes the name Cher, C-H-E-R, like a quadrille Jewish dance from Eastern Europe, a Cher. The C stands for creation partnering. Basic concept of Kabbalah is that we're partners in ongoing creation. The creation is continuing. After the Shabbat, it continued on the 8th day and the 9th, and now maybe it's the 15th day of creation. Who knows? The world is created in conjunction, in partnership with human beings. So that's the first theme, is how these potencies help us to be co-creators. How we receive revelation, which means discovery, and we use that revelation to solve world problems, to cure diseases, to build better structures, to be able to overcome plagues, and save ourselves from floods. The H is holiness. We receive holiness through this sphira. One in particular, the one in the middle, called Tiferet, is the sphira of holiness. Literally, holiness is balance and equilibrium and harmony in the world. God is a force of creating harmony within the sphirot and within the greater world. And we, in turn, have our role in tikkun olam, of restoring that harmony, and in ourselves, in personal tikkun, which is fixing, repairing our own balance of evil inclination. And that's called repentance, returning to balance. But so holiness is important. All of Jewish rituals about creating holiness. Holiness in marriage, in funeral, and mourning rituals, in all of the holidays, and particularly in the Sabbath, in Shabbat. And the Lecha Dodi prayer is about creating that holiness, that palace of holiness. So, and then the final, the R, the final part of the CHER, the final category of Kabbalah, is revelation. And that's really the strongest theme of the Zohar. It's all about revelation and new discovery, focusing, at least on the surface, on revelation from Torah. As you'll see as you get into Kabbalah, Torah is really a broadcaster transmitter of revelation to us. And the surface stories are the least important part of that. It's what's under the surface. And that's what the Zohar is digging at, that under the surface revelation about these four themes and about the individual sefirot themselves. Let me share screen and pull up. Everybody should have the three handouts. If not, if Jerry could put that into the chat, the link to get to those handouts. One is this tree of life. Another is the other two we're going to really focus on today, the symbolism around that tree of life. And so you can learn to decode the Zohar, decode Jewish prayer, and decode Torah, and life generally through those symbols of Kabbalah. And the third is a reading from the Zohar, from the latter parts of the Zohar, actually from the 14th century, that talks about this interplay between the Sefirot as a demonstration of how that actually works. So let me pull this up, and if you don't have it, you can go to the link and download the three handouts. And there we go. Can everybody see this now? This is the tree of life, the 10 Sefirot. And there are three columns. There's a left side, a right side, and a middle. Can you see my pointer? And the middle mediates and balances between the left and the right. If it becomes out of balance, we sin. So to review these 10, Keter is the unknowable aspect of God. Wisdom, called Chokhmah, to the right, along with is balanced by understanding or intelligence. If you have a shortfall of wisdom and in your ability to understand, your intelligence, then you have the potential for sin. On the second level, the fourth sefirah is kindness and compassion, but it's also altruism, expansiveness, conscience, and balancing that is power and coalescence. Two names, Gevura, which means power and strength, and Din, which means governance, or the ability, the flow of potency that enables us to coalesce, govern. Again, if you have power but without enough compassion, enough altruism, you're egoistical in your gevura, you're selfish in your use of power among others, then you have the tendency for sin. Tiferet balances that, draws from the right side, the holy side, into the left side in order to create a balance. And that force of balance, equilibrium, harmony is what's defined as holiness in Kabbalah. Holiness, making holiness of ourselves and of Shabbat, of our marriage, whatever is creating balance, equilibrium, harmony in ourselves, in the world, in our practice of religion. So the next level, Netzach, is very important, along with its companion, Hod, in understanding Zohar. Netzach is what's called engaging in Torah and being able to draw down, merge Chokhmah into Bina, wisdom into intelligence. Intelligence becomes the womb, and of gestation of the lower seven. You have an upper part of this and a lower world of these sphirot, and these seven what enable us to co-create. And Netzach is their ability to draw principles, values, and messages about ourselves and our purpose in life and our mission. And Hod is the emotion and the motivation to carry it out. The Netzach without Hod, there's nothing. It's just air. And Hod without Netzach is the potential for evil inclination, because some of those emotions are jealousy and anger, frustration, as well as gratefulness, joy, and all sorts of positive motivations. Yesod, also called the All as an alternate name, is the foundation of all of this. All of these flow into Yesod. Yesod is called the tree of life, as is this whole diagram. And it is life. It's the aspect of God that gives us life, our instincts, drives. But it's also two other things. It's righteousness and it's peace. And then out of that finally comes the ability to feel God's presence, called sovereignty or malchut. And that's the ability to have a mystical experience, the ability to feel God's presence, to feel spiritual. So that's pretty much what we covered last week in a nutshell. And if we had a smaller group, I'd ask for questions here, but you're going to have to reserve those to the end. So the next thing I want to talk about is the symbolism of all of this. If you superimposed onto this the symbols, it becomes very dynamic. For instance, let me pull up that chart of what I call Appendix A. And you should have this in front of you so you can take notes and see it all. Like you can't see, I'm trying to move this over. Can everybody see this fully? It's not sliding.
We see it up through the Chochmah and Bina sentence.
But on the right side, mine is being cut off here on the right side. And I can't seem to, there. I'll move the pictures over a little bit. Okay. Well, this is the key to understanding the Zohar, is this compendium that of symbols, appellatives, aliases, codes. It's a code language for understanding Torah, and it's the same code language that the Zohar is written in, and many other Kabbalistic works. The names, oh, here we go. References to Sfirot are sometimes called days, sayings, statements, utterances. Sometimes they're called the colors, rivers, heavens, worlds, aspects, borders, levels, powers. A lot of names, including garments, which is in one of the readings that I might get to today. Foundations, gates, and rungs. For each of the Sfirot, there are many, many code names. You sort of, from studying Zohar, you get to learn them over time. I was using Chesed as an example earlier. kindness and goodness. Well, there's God names. El is the name for chesed. Water is chesed, sometimes called the upper waters, the color white, silver, south, the right arm, part of the body. Forefather Abraham, Miriam also. A Hasid is sometimes a code for chesed. Dawn, well, the Zohar will talk about dawn in a poetic way, and it's talking about chesed. And angel Michael. So as you see, there's certain categories. The second part of this compendium is all the different categories, not all, but a number of different categories. So there's one category, the names of God. There's one God. God is a unity of one name, but the different names of God, of which there are hundreds, but the core names of God in Jewish prayer in particular are associated with different sefirot. So what does that mean? That means that Jewish prayer, if you understand Kabbalah, is a totally different level of meaning and meaningfulness. For instance, the Shema, hear, listen, receive. Shema means hear. It's Moses' commandment to the Israelites to hear what I'm saying, receive what I'm saying, is how Kabbalists would understand that. Yisrael, calling the people of Israel, the assembly of Israel, is Malchut. So here, Malchut is the Shekhinah, the capacity to feel God's presence. But here, listen, receive Shekhinah, Israel. Yud Chei Vav Hei Eloheinu is the sphera of Bina, intelligence. Here, stimulate your intelligence, Israel, out of your ability to know and understand. Adonai Eloheinu, and then Adonai alone, the most important name of God, it's the holy name of God for Tiferet, balance and holiness, the nucleus of this whole molecule of the tree of life. And then each of the individual letters of the holy name represent different sefirot. Yud is Chochmah, the first Hey of Yud Hey Vav Hey is Bina, the Vav is Tiferet, and the Hey is Malchut. And there are many Kabbalistic meditations focusing on this name, particularly by Abulafia in the middle of the 13th century, developed a whole meditative system around the holy letters. Parts of the body, arms, legs, represent different sefirot, which gives the Kabbalist opportunity to feel the flow coming in. Modeh ani lefanecha, which a religious Jew will say every morning when he or she gets up. Thankful am I before you. As soon as you say thank you, a Kabbalist would think of the left leg, because that's where Hod is. That's where we receive gratefulness and other emotions. You feel the flow of God coming in. The colors, as you saw on the colorful tree of life, the colors are very significant. Particularly Chesed, white. We wear white on Yom Kippur because that's the side of God that flows into us of compassion. And that's what we want, the compassion, not the red side of God, which is Gevurah and power and strict judgment. We wear white when we get married, and many Jews are buried in a white kittel, all bringing it, and Jews often dress in white on Shabbat, all drawing in through the color chesed. days of the week, and numbers 1 through 7. All of those lower sphirot, 1 through 7, of significance as days of creation, days of the week, days in terms of counting of the Omer, weeks in terms of counting of the Omer, 7 days of Sukkot, of Passover, any holiday that has 7 days, 8 outside of Israel. The core 7 are these sphirot. Now, forefathers is very important. And particularly those that are discussed extensively in the book of Genesis. Abraham is the sphira of compassion, of goodness, and Isaac is the sphira of power and coalescence. And Jacob is the balancing power between them of holiness and harmony. Now, these, unlike the names of God, are not the emanators of the Sfirot, they're the receivers of the Sfirot. Because the book of Genesis, to Kabbalists, is a book of continuing creation. It's a story of ongoing creation after the first 6 days of creation. And after the flood and God destroying the world and repenting in the form of a rainbow and all the colors, still the world is not right. And God, the unknown source, the Ein Sof, the infinite, continues the evolutionary process so that the Sfirot become created. The ability to receive the Sfirot become created. And the story of Abraham is the first to receive the ability for chesed. Now, he doesn't demonstrate that. He's not the most chesedic person, not the most compassionate in everything he does. But it represents the development and evolution of chesed. Isaac represents the development and evolution of power and coalescence into power. But connected with Isaac is evil inclination. That's the left side. So when in the Akedah, in the Zohar, when Abraham is told by Ha-Elohim, God, which is the Sphira of Gevura, remember, Elohim is Gevura, somewhere on here, and Elohim, Gevura and Din, you see, Elohim, Ha-Elohim Nisad Abraham, he tested Abraham. It's not testing his dedication, his belief, his loyalty, as has often been misconstrued. It is his testing, the developing Abraham for chesed. Would he sacrifice his son Isaac? Because if he's too strong on the chesed, on the compassion, on the unselfishness, then how could he allow evil inclination to come into the world? And he comes close to sacrificing, but he binds Isaac, binding Gevura. Nothing about sacrificing. It's like a sacrifice, but he binds Gevura, and the Malach Yud-Heh Vav-Heh, the angel, the messenger, the flow of Yud-Heh Vav-Heh, which is Tiferet, which is Jacob to come. He hasn't been born yet into the world. Comes and says, Abraham, how can you sacrifice your left arm, your Gevura arm, part of you? Because without power, without strength, without coalescence, human beings can't be co-creators. That is the Kabbalistic understanding of the Akedah through the Zohar. So the forefathers are very important in understanding this flow. Foremothers too, very important, particularly in this week's Parsha and last week's. Rebecca, Now, Rachel and Leah become prominent because Rachel is Malchut. She's the Shekhinah. She's the capability to feel God's presence. The evolution of that. And if you have a close reading of the story of Rachel, you sort of can see that between the lines. And Leah is the evolution of the development of understanding, of intelligence. And surreptitiously subversive Zohar passage about the plagues, about the frogs specifically. When the frogs are created, well, before that, when the Nile turns to blood, the Zohar talks about how Rachel is crying out like the frogs are crying out. The Shekhinah is crying on what is being perpetrated on Egypt in order to demonstrate the strength of Elohim, the God name of Gevura, of power and strength. What's happening? As we see it today, and as Kabbalists saw it from the 12th and 13th century, war is no way to settle conflict. War is the worst alternative. Use of strength and demonstration of power and creating suffering on another. That's what's happening in Ukraine today. That's what happens in the 10 plagues. The Zohar says that Rachel is crying. You know, what's happening here? So we'll be talking about the worst of the plagues this week and how the Zohar handles that, the death of the firstborn. So you see all of the categories: family members, royalty, heavenly bodies. The sun is Tiferet, the moon is Malchut. The directions are very important because first of all, they're referred to oftentimes in Zohar language. You've got to understand that when it's talking about the south, it's talking about Chesed, and the north is Gevura. But also in Jewish prayer, we face the east, not because we're facing the temple, as the Zohar would maintain, or where the temple was for Jews living in Eastern Europe to the east, but we're facing Tiferet, the holiness of God. We're drawing in as we face the east for the Amida, for the Aleinu, and for other core prayers, particularly prayers like the Aleinu that we bow. We don't bow to God outside of us. We bow in Kabbalah to God flowing in. And when we reach out our right arm, our right hand, to touch a mezuzah and bring it to our lips, we're drawing in chesed with the right arm. When we're coming into the house, when we need chesed, when we're leaving the house, going into the cruel and dangerous world, we kiss the mezuzah for strength and draw in strength with the left arm. West is the direction of Malchut, of the Shekhinah. And when we rise, the last verse of Lachadodi by Alkabetz in the 16th century, a Kabbalist. The Kabbalists around Isaac Luria and Alkabetz and that other phenomenal community that gathered in the 16th century in Sfat, Israel, they would go out and welcome the Sabbath from the setting sun to the west on the hills. In the hill, Mount Meron looks like a reclining woman. That's the Shekhinah. That's the image of the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah is Malchut, our ability to feel God's presence, the holiness we're bringing in. We face the door to the west because we're facing to the west. I can't tell you how many rabbis I've tried to argue or point out to them that please don't announce that we're facing the door to welcome the bride coming in through the door. No, you're welcoming the Sabbath bride, which is the Shekhinah, which is the holiness of Sabbath coming in from the west direction of the Shekhinah. So these directions become very important in Jewish practice, and in waving the lulav and the etrog, as I pointed out last week, in 6 directions. Each one of those directions, you're drawing in the respective sphira. It's a tremendous meditative experience, feeling that potency coming in. And some people can spend hours on that every night. And every day of the 7 days of Sukkot is a day celebrating the Ushpizim, the guests, which are really hosts. The word Ushpizim really refers to host, not a guest in ancient Aramaic. And we are the guest of one of the Sfirot every day, the forefathers. Abraham, the first night is the night of Chesed, and the second is the night of Gevura, and so on through the 7 lower Sfirot. So that's a summary of all of this. And I'm back. So the other aspect of important symbolism is the parts of the body, because when we're receiving the flow, we're receiving it into different parts of the body. The right arm is Chesed and the left arm is Gevura. So when the Haggadah talks about the strong arm of God, it's talking about the strong left power arm of God, because Passover is all about celebrating the left side. We've eliminated evil inclination, which is part of the left side, a necessary component of our being co-creators. And the Haggadah is full of this symbolism. The various names of God, parts of the body, talking about God's left arm. And what I want to move to next are some actual examples of Kabbalistic writing in the Zohar. And you'll get a sense of how this is very clandestinely written, because it's all in the symbolism that I've just explained. So if you pull out the third handout, and which I have right here somewhere. Here. Okay, that's this one. It's from one of my books. And I took the liberty of indicating the sphira where there's a symbol that's representing that sphira. But this is the only passage I know that really gives the names of the sphira. Actually, scholars believed it was an addition to the Zohar from the probably the early 14th century, as opposed to the 13th century, when the work primarily came together and was edited by Shimon Bar Yochai. So let me read this and give a little bit of explanation in the depth of this passage about the Sfirot. From this, we may determine, from what they've been discussing about in various passages of Psalms and Proverbs, one is the source. The source is Keter, of the sea, the source of the sea. Well, the sea is being, it's understanding, it's intelligence. So the first sphira is the source of the sea of Bina. A current comes forth and makes a turn, which is like a yud. And yud, remember this, the 4 letters of the holy name, Yud He Vav He, YHVH. The yud represents chokhmah. So chokhmah is like a fast-flowing stream. When you think about that, well, that's true about wisdom. It's so amorphous. What is being wise versus being knowledgeable? And where in our lives do we have maybe too much intelligence, but not enough of that fast-flowing stream, that amorphous quality called wisdom in our work as a lawyer, as a doctor, as a scientist? Do we really have enough wisdom in what we're doing? Or are we just showing our intelligence and creating things because we can create them, but that aren't wise? A current comes forth from it, the unknowable source, making a turn, which is yud. If you have your Sfirot in front of you, see it's making a turn like this into Bina, through the dark blue of Chokhmah into the green of Bina, which also is the parsley and the green on the Seder plate. The source is 1, and the current makes 2 Sfirot. Then the vast basin known as the sea is formed, which is like a channel dug into the earth, and it's filled by the waters flowing from the source. And this sea is the 3rd thing. Well, sea is one of the code names for Bina. So it's talking about Bina being like a basin, like a sea, like a womb. The source, the sea is the 3rd thing. This vast basin is divided into 7 channels, the 7 lowest Sfirot. Resembling that number of long tubes, the water goes from the sea into the 7 channels. So the sea gestates and develops the wisdom that it receives, and then out of that re-emanates the 7 lower Sfirot. Together, the source, the current, the sea, and the 7 channels make the number 10, 10 Sfirot. If the creator who made these tubes should choose to break them, then the waters would return to their source. Only broken vessels would remain. Water, without water. And in the 16th century, this concept was developed into a whole theory of evil around these broken shards from earlier creation attempts by Ein Sof, the unknowable source. And what is it that holds these channels and directs them into us? It is Gevura. It is strength. You need strength and power and containment and limitation in order, otherwise there would just be amorphous matter. In order for there to be a coalescence of matter for any physical structure, and certainly for any life to form, you need that coalescence. You need the Gevura to channel the flow into us. But if these vessels of glass, of whatever, shatter, then you have shards. Those are called klipot, the shards. And those have evil attached to them because there's Gevura that's separated, that's isolated. So it's a complementary understanding of evil that's built on the idea of the left side being the side of evil inclination.
Jay,
yeah.
You might want to do a screen share on the document, because I think a lot of people don't have copies of it. The copies are in the online. They might have downloaded it, might not have.
Okay, here it is again. Oops, it's not this one though. And maybe this one. There it is. Okay, is it showing there?
We see the tree of life.
Yeah. Oh, you mean of the document that I'm reading from?
That's what I was saying, yes.
Okay, I can do that. I have it right here.
I thought it might help people.
Here we go. Yeah, some people may have had a chance to look at this in preparation for the class today, but okay. Can you see that now?
We still see the tree of life. The document, if you look in the chat, I put the connection to the document in the chat.
I have it in front of me on the screen here. Let me stop the share and reshare, and it should come up. Now, can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah, this is it. Okay. So in the same fashion, the cause of causes, which is Ein Sof, the unknowable source, and that's all we can know, incidentally, of Keter, of the unknowable source, is that it cannot not emanate, but it's a source of emanation. In the same fashion, the cause of causes derives the 10 aspects of himself. And that's an important way of thinking about this. There are aspects of God, which are known as Sfirot, and named Keter, the source, which it named the source, which is a never to be exhausted fountain of light. It's like a star or a black hole. Consequently, he designates himself Ein Sof, without end. He has neither shape nor form nor vessel exists to contain him, nor any means to comprehend him. You see how the Zohar talks about the unknowability of the source. Then he shaped a vessel, a small yud, the Chokhmah, and he filled it from him and called it Chokhmah, gushing fountain, and called himself wise because of it. And then he formed a large vessel named the sea and called it Bina, and himself understanding on its account. He is both wise and understanding in his own essence. However, Chokhmah, in and of itself, cannot claim such a title, but only through him who is wise and has made it full from his fountain. Thus, Bina in itself cannot claim that title of being intelligence. It's nothing, intelligence, without a human being to be intelligent, but only through him who has filled it from his essence would it turn into a desert if he was to withdraw from it. And that is core to a key idea of Kabbalah that was articulated actually by that great Kabbalist Madonna, who that I heard her make this point in a radio interview. She said, the one thing that I've really gotten from Kabbalah is an understanding that my talent is not my own. It's one of the most talented performers, actresses, vocalists, for sure, musicians in our generation. And she recognizes that her talent and all of our talents are not our own. That's what this is saying in this passage. So finally, he smites the sea into 7 streams. That is, he directs it into 7 precious vessels, which he calls Gedula, Gavura, Netzach, Chod, Yesod, Malchut. Gedula is an alternate name for Chesed. In each, he designates himself. In each, he designates himself, thereby great through Gedula, strong through Gevura, glorious through Tiferet, everlasting through Netzach, the beauty of our Maker through Hod, righteous through Yesod. I retranslate that bet as through. It's the same letter word in Hebrew, in or through. All things, all vessels, and all worlds does he appear through Yesod. Yesod is all, it all comes together, which is righteousness. In the last one, the bottom one, Malchut, the Shekhinah, the ability to feel God's presence, he calls himself king. And his is, and this is from Proverbs, that's part of the Torah service, taking out the Torah. L'cha Adonai hagedula v'hagavura v'hatiferet. To you is the Gedula, the Gevura, the Tiferet, the Netzach, and the Hod for all, which is Yesod, that is in the heaven and the earth, is for you, and you are the kingdom. The Malchut is kingdom. Yud He Vav He, Tiferet. You are exalted as head above all. So that's a sample of some of a little bit of Zohar, and that's the only part of Zohar that I'm aware of that actually has listed all of the names of the Sfirot and how they interact together. That's now written in code. Okay, I want to leave some time for questions. I have two more passages of Zohar we can get to later, but let me take some questions first. What I suggest, instead of going through what might be old questions on the, already in the chat, let's first let people, including people who may have given a question in the chat, raise their hand, and we'll try to take them in order. The hand raising button, as you remember from last week, is under reactions down the second to the last, or the second from the right on the bottom, reactions. And if you click on that, and then you can click raise hand. Deborah Greitzer, you get the first question.
Yeah, I'm listening to you, and it's all very interesting, and I realize I'm not going to get it right away, but it doesn't, I don't know how I'm supposed to be reacting to this. What does it mean if you tell me that I'm supposed to feel, when I say the Modeh Ani in the morning, I'm supposed to feel it in my left leg? I mean, that doesn't, I understand that the left leg represents one of the Sephirah, all that, but why?
Well, the why is that's up to the individual. The with regard to all of the meditative aspect of this. If you're not into meditation, then you're not into meditation. If you are, then this can be an enhancement to one's meditation. It's very different in Kabbalah to be meditating in the form of mindfulness on God flowing in, as opposed to delving deeper and deeper into yourself. It is focusing on the holiness of God in different forms, in 10 different forms, flowing in. And that was just one example of a prayer that a Kabbalist would concentrate. It's called kavanah, focus, concentration on that flow with that word, hod, gratefulness, because that's the name of the Sfirah. It's hod, literally meaning majesty, but actually from the word hoda'ah means gratefulness, and it represents all of our emotions. So our emotions, to an observant Jew, there's a prayer for almost every emotion, every experience.
But don't the words that are in their prayers themselves? I mean, I've read these wonderful analyses of how each word, Baruch, has so much meaning in of itself. Now, I'm just wondering why we're adding this other level to it.
Well, it's not adding another level to it. It's an alternative to a lot of the classical understandings. It's a whole alternative approach to achieving spirituality in Judaism. And a reason that Kabbalah is reviving after being lost for several hundred years, since the 1720s and 30s, when it became, as I pointed out last week, it became asur, forbidden to teach Kabbalah or to study it. So it became lost within a generation. And so this was mainstream Judaism. This is the foundation of most of the rituals that we practice, including lighting candles while we cover our eyes, rising up 3 times when we say Kadosh, 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 and when we say Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, most 95% of religious Orthodox Jews who would say that have no connection to the flow. It's just mumble jumble to them. Well, I got to say this: the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. But when a Kabbalist or a Chassid, which is a branch of Kabbalah, an offshoot of Kabbalah, would say those words, those symbols, they would feel the flow of Chesed into the right arm, of Gevura into the left, and of Tiferet into the torso. So I'm just giving you an example of how Kabbalists try to draw a meaning in spirituality, where to these Kabbalists, Judaism was void, was sterile of spirituality, of connection to God. So that's the Jewish mysticism side of Kabbalah. The other side of Kabbalah is just the theological side, the understanding of God as being this combination of these 10 sefirot coming into us. So you have a rationalistic, cognitive side of Kabbalah that enables the mystical and spiritual side. So let's take another question. I hope I answered that question. That takes a whole lecture in and of itself, Deborah. It's a great question. Great question. And and Leslie Otis. You have to
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I was wondering if the angels have a connection to individual sefirot.
They absolutely do. Great question. An angel literally means a malach, a messenger of God. To the Kabbalists, this is most ancient form of Kabbalah, because the concept of angels goes back into earliest biblical literature, and is throughout the Psalms. But the angels are the deliverers of the sefirot, and angels have no substance, so to speak, in Jewish tradition, but they are the shefa, the flow itself, and in some cases the capacity for us to be able to receive. And the angel Michael is chesed, and Gabriel, from the word gevura, is the angel of power and strength, and Ariel is the angel of Tiferet and of holiness. So, and there are prayers about the angels. So a Kabbalist would immediately feel and picture and experience that flow from that angel in that prayer or in that psalm. Great question. Well, that's one of the many categories that I think I left off of the chart. But I ought to add a section for the various angels as connection. Yeah.
Jay, I have a question. Zohar then starts early. I think you've mentioned 13th, 14th century, before printing, of course. For whom was Zohar written? Who was supposed to be looking at this? Other rabbis, other scholars? It strikes me that someone who's working every day, by the sweat of his brow, studying this would be rather difficult. So those, and I take it was rabbis who wrote for whom?
That's a great question, Jerry. And I see the parallel to this to a Farbrengen Torah discussion in the old days. Farbrengen, for those who don't know it, is one of the original founders of the Jewish Studies Center. Or really, it sprung out of Farbrengen, and it's still a very close connection. It's a Jewish community that's one of the first chavarot from the 60s and 70s, and we would have long Torah discussions every week. Read the whole Torah portion in English, and then wrestle with it, talk about it, build on each other's inspirations. That's what the Zohar is doing. Exactly. In answer to your question, Jerry, who's it's written for? It's written for themselves. It is doing Kabbalah. It is not expounding on Kabbalah. It is not written to educate anybody on Kabbalah. It became a holy work, as holy as the Torah and the Talmud for several hundred years in Judaism, because it was like the Torah. It was a transmitter, a broadcaster of revelation. And that's what we try to achieve on Monday night. We're trying to figure out, decode it, translate it, translate the symbolism into what it actually means, and how can we apply that to our lives. Its purpose is to flow to us, to enable us to understand the world, God, prayer, repentance, and holiness ourselves, and enrich our lives.
Does that mean then that you would take a parsha every week, the parsha that's being read, and through the use of Kabbalah, understand it differently than usual? Or is Kabbalah not connected with the weekly reading of Torah?
It's absolutely intimately connected. It's arranged, the whole Zohar. Well, not the whole Zohar, because there are sections on Shir Shirim, Song of Songs, and Esther, and other parts of the Bible. But the core part is organized with around most of the Torah portions. So last week was Shemot, and this week and Va'era, and now this coming week is the next parsha, and it starts as this one does on Shemot. These are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob. Each man with his household they came, from Exodus 1:1. These Elah Shemot, that's how it gets its name. These are the names of those who came down to Egypt. And then it goes right into, well, the enlightened will shine like a Zohar Harakia. Zohar, that's the name of the book, comes from this. So the radiance of the sky, and those who turn many to righteousness, like the stars, forever and ever. Well, that's a quote right from Daniel 12:3. That's sort of the jumping off point. What many rabbis and scholars who studied Zohar don't understand is that this is an extension of a midrash, an interpretation of Shemot, the first parsha of the book of Shemot. Then it goes on. Zohar, meaning radiance, of this expanse brilliantly illumines the garden, and the tree of life stands in the middle of the garden. Its branches covering all those forms, trees and spices in worthy garments. Beneath it, all beasts of the field find shade, and all birds of the sky dwell beneath those branches. See how cryptic that is, but it's poetry, right, Patricia? It's the poet among us.
Right.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful, and it talks about illuminates the garden. This radiance, visualize a radiance coming and illuminating this tree of life of the real world. The Garden of Eden is the Sfirot, all the Sfirot. It's one of the names for all of them together. And the tree of life, which is Yesod, right, is the tree of life. The Yesod, the meaning foundation, which is the life force and the ability to feel needs and instincts. And the middle of the garden, so the Zohar, this radiance, illuminates the tree of life itself in the middle of the garden, as you saw on the chart here in the middle. It's actually the lower middle. Some Kabbalists think of tree of life as Tiferet, but from studying Zohar, it's really mostly Yesod, where all the Sfirot are. And trees, its branches covering all those forms, trees and spices in worthy garments. The garments are a term for individual Sfirot, like garments. Beneath it all, the beasts of the field and shade, all the birds of the sky dwell beneath those branches. And then it goes on, again, Zohar, radiance. The Zohar is the fruit of the tree. The fruit of the tree provides life to all. This is the tree of life. That's Yesod that we're talking about. Provides life to all. That's a flow from God. It's the life for everyone, existing forever and ever. The other side, code name for the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, called the other side, Sitra Ochra in Aramaic, does not abide there. Only the side of holiness, the right side, not on the left side. Happy is the share of those who taste it, existing forever and ever. These are called living in this world and living in the world that is coming. The world that is coming is not the world to come, but the world that is coming, as is in the Zohar, is the flow that's coming into us. Later today, after this session tomorrow, that flow, particularly into Yesod, as long as we're alive, that flow of life is coming into us. And it's our job to enhance and strengthen the flow of wisdom and intelligence and compassion and power and the flow of principles and of mission and of emotion that we need to carry out that mission, all of those. And the flow of the Shekhinah. We got to strengthen that flow. That is the world that is coming to us. So that's an example of beautiful passage of Zohar that we just happened to study last week when we were on Shemot. Okay, no other questions? I don't see any hands up. Those are excellent questions, though. Here's one from Rima Faber. You have to unmute yourself, maybe. Do they have to unmute themselves, Jerry?
People can unmute themselves.
Yeah, they have to do it themselves, so yeah.
Yeah.
So, Rima, do you have a question? You have to hit unmute in the bottom left-hand corner.
Mm.
There you are. Okay. No, I still can't hear you.
She
Oh.
looks to be unmuted.
Unmuted. But I can't hear you.
Right, neither can I.
Yeah, do we have another question in the meantime?
Maybe if she takes her headset off or plugs it out and plugs it back in.
Yeah, try taking your headset off. If
Can you hear me if I
Yeah,
took my,
yeah.
Oh, we can hear you, yes.
That's it.
oh, so my headset did something. Okay.
Yeah,
Deborah got me thinking. And I sort of went on my own process listening to her. And I sort of want to just ask you, is this sort of the way we should be reading things? So when she was talking about her left leg, and I thought, okay, if the body is a metaphor, which it is, I truly believe it is a metaphor. A leg is part of our foundations that allows us to travel through the world and go places. So if we are using our left, thinking of our left leg, would that be giving us the strength to move forward with the evil and power and all the negative in the world, but give us the strength to take the journey? Is that kind of where thinking along those lines would?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a whole different but complementary approach
Yeah.
to theology and to receiving God instead of, or just praying to a transcendental God outside.
Uh-huh.
As attributes that has once you've defined God, then it becomes hard to believe in God.
Mm-hmm.
This is an approach to religion where believing in God is irrelevant. You can feel God's presence. That's one of the flows itself, is that capacity to feel God's presence. And once you feel God's presence, then it's not, there's no question of belief or not belief. You get that strength to move on and walk on. And in fact, your metaphor is a really good one for the Zohar, because it uses that metaphor all the time, including this past week's Parsha,
Mm-hmm.
where it talks about two of the companions were walking and a man joined them. They're walking across Galilee. They're always moving towards revelation, is the metaphor. They're moving,
Mm-hmm.
they're not sitting. They're almost always moving around and building off each other's inspiration, trying to seek and draw down with their power of Netzach, new understanding of Torah and of themselves.
So I was just following this because, I mean, having the sense of flow and energy and spirit is one part of it, but then in reading Zohar, we're trying to translate the meaning through metaphor. And so my question is basically, was I thinking of the message coming into me in the right way to understand it?
That's a good example.
Okay.
And another application of that is to the sphera of Gevura, of strength.
Mm-hmm.
We're progressing, we need the strength,
Right.
to walk there, to move there, to get there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're building a phenomenal new structure. It's an architecturally genius approach. But we need the money to build it. We need the know-how, of course, of how to build it. And we need the motivation, but we need the hammers and the nails and the materials
Mhm.
in order to build it. That's all Gevura, the strength and the power, along with the Hod, which is the emotional motivation. I really want to build this house. Otherwise, we'll be out in the rain. And the knowledge of how to do it, like Noah building his ark. That's a flow from God, of Bina, teaching him how to build it. There's no wisdom in it. And it's a very early stage of human development that Noah builds his ark. It's the first attempt, successful attempt to overcome nature. So, but he needs the left side. He needs that Gevura. He needs the motivation, which he really lacks, doing anything but planting a vineyard after he survives and getting stone drunk. So it's very deep Kabbalistically, that whole story of Noah.
Mhm.
Okay, we have one, and well, Deborah, you already asked the question. We might want to see if the other
I
people.
just wanted to respond because I thought what Rima said was really beautiful, but when I say the Modeh Ani, the words, what I'm doing is I'm thanking God for having put my soul back, brought my soul back after resting. It seems like there's an awful lot going on there already, and I wonder, that's why I was asking about why I need all these additional metaphors. There's a lot going on already between me and Hashem. And then there's all the morning Baruchot after that, which ties in, the body, if you say the bathroom blessing, and that ties the body in with the soul. And there seems like there's an awful lot right in the words of the prayers themselves. So that's why I was asking about the metaphors.
I get it. Yeah. And that you're absolutely correct. But I think you might find that through Kabbalah, it adds even more. It adds a spiritual component. It's not all rationalistic. And what does it mean for, Melech Chai B'Kayam? What does that mean? That sounds to me like Kabbalah that lives. The Melech means emanator. It's the term used for the various sfirot that are emanators into lower sfirot, and Chai B'Kayam, that lives and continues and flows all the time into us. That return to me, my soul. Soul is the capacity to be able to receive. That's our soul. There's 3 categories of soul, levels of soul in Kabbalah, and whether it's nefesh, ruach, neshama, related to each level of the sfirot, each world, as they're called. So the returned neshama to me is returning the chokhmah and bina to me. So it's a whole new depth of understanding to basic prayers that we might have been taught when we were little. Yeah, great question.
Well, is it a new understanding, or is it a substitute for most of the prayers that we say every day? Is it a substitute for reading the Parsha?
Well, that's up to the individual that's studying. If you're observant Jew or Christian, then it's an enhancement to your current religious practices and understanding of the rituals. If you're at the level of basic Judaism and you didn't grow up with any sense of Judaism, and you're in a mixed marriage, and yet you're seeking you're searching for spirituality. Well, this is spirituality in Judaism. So many of that category became Jewish Buddhists, Jubus, in the 60s and 70s. And we have one or two of those in our regular Monday class. But so for them, it's an enhancement to their Buddhism. And we have Christians in our class, it's enhancement to their Christianity. There's a strong, long tradition in Christianity of Kabbalah that became more prevalent than Jewish Kabbalah, because Jewish Kabbalah was lost from the 18th century on. But Christian Kabbalah became a foundation for modern philosophy. So many of the philosophers and the artists and writers of the Enlightenment period were Kabbalists. Sir Isaac Newton wrote more treatises on Kabbalah than he did on science. And Locke, who was Kabbalah, directed a lot of his thought. Shakespeare was definitely a Kabbalist. There's so many Kabbalistic symbols in there. And the Merchant of Venice, talking about the Shylock, in his first soliloquy, talks about we're the people of Abraham. We're kind and compassionate and giving people. But later, when he's been burnt, robbed from, he's turning more and more evil, and he said, "We're the people of Isaac, of power and vengeance and evil inclination." So Shakespeare was definitely into Kabbalah. There's a long tradition in Christianity of Kabbalah from the 15th century on.
Jay, I think we should draw it to a close. It's about
Right.
40 minutes. Anyway, a few people asked questions like, how can I get into your class, et cetera, et cetera. So I think when I send the email out about the recording, we'll put information about Jay's class and Jay's email. You can email to Jay, and there may be more information. Than when Jay looks over the chat more carefully, we can put information about questions you're asking in the email. And I do want to thank Jay for all the
Thanks.
teachings that you're explaining and the good questions from the people who are watching. And I want to thank Jerry Stilkin for his questions and his introduction. And about a month from now, on the 19th, which is a Sunday, we're going to have our next class, which is about synagogue architecture in America and how it developed, and where it's going, etc. So a little different about the architecture of synagogues rather than the spirituality of Judaism. A lot of different aspects. So I'm sorry, Jerry, you're saying something?
No, I'm just saying great. Yeah,
The picks and shovels of Judaism.
Okay. So anyway, if you have more questions, I'll probably post the chat also on the in the Google folder. But also you can email to Jewish Study Center at gmail.com for questions, or you can email directly to Jay, or if you email to Jewish Study Center at gmail.com, I'll forward it to Jay.
Yeah, do that, Jerry. And if you email me directly, you have my email address, and let me know if you're interested in coming, and I'll put you on the regular mailing list for the Monday night class, as well as for the Tu B'Shvat Seder a week from Sunday.
Besides the email, I think we'll put, if it's okay with Jay, we'll put your email also in the class description on the website, so we can always get it that way. Okay, and I think it was a great class, and thank you everyone for your good questions. And again, thank Jay and thank Jerry. And see
Thank
you all
you.
next month.
Take care.
Tודה.
If you missed class 1, you can get that on the Jewish Study Center website.
Right.
Thanks a
Take
lot.
care, everybody.
Thank you. Tודה.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.